just do a general salute then. Ooh, Lord.
Black power, y'all. I don't always get the pin notification when I'm doing vlogs.
Really?
Really? She like, I'm being here.
Black Power, Diego. What's going on, comrade? Y'all come on. It's time for the Revolutionary Book Trap. Gang.
What's up? Good morning.
Please make sure you share Comrade Diego and anybody else that comes in. Make sure you share on your timeline, any groups that you might be in.
Who's that?
Black Power Dan.
Black power.
Happy
Thank you
Sunday
for
morning to you.
us.
Yes, thank you for joining us for the Revolutionary Book Club, aka Book Trap, where we push political education. Political education is our drug of choice, you know. This is going to be a great episode. Today we are concluding our second book, Revolutionary the comrade. Revolutionary Suicide by Comrade Huey P. Newton. We've come to the end of the road, comrade.
We have.
It's over.
Wow, and this was such a good book.
It really was. So
I'm sort of sad.
You know, I'm sad, but then I'm also excited to move on to our next book. So
Yes.
it's gonna be great. I got nobody to share it to though. Just share it anyway, comrade. They don't just share it.
Just share it. Share it on your page. Share it on your platform. Share it on all the groups that you're in. It doesn't, you know, you don't have to tag anybody. Just share it so that the information gets out.
Black Power, comrades. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We just want to formally welcome everybody to the Revolutionary Book Trap presented by Black Hammer. It's your boy Chief Dia with my girl, my comrade, Chief Nyah. And yeah, y'all know we do this every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here from the Black Hammer Facebook page. Again, thank you all for tuning in. And if you do happen to rewatch this once the live has ended, please just make sure you share to your groups, you know, all of your platforms, you know, wherever you have a social media presence. And we also want to first tell you how you can support the Revolutionary Book Trap. You can donate through any of the links that we have pinned here in the comment section right here. You can go through Cash App at BH Book Club. You can go to GoFundMe.com/BlackHammerOrg, or you can go to the Black Hammer website at BlackHammerOrg and donate through that way. And yeah, help keep me and Comrade Nyah on air. We're trying to do some big things. We want to get some mics so that way we can have better quality, because we want to turn these episodes into podcasts.
Yes.
So we can put them up on our SoundCloud page. We also have a Spotify page coming in the works. Shout out to Comrade Robert, Chief Robert, who's working on that. We got so many great things in store for you all. And yeah. So before we get into today's episode, we want to give a shout out to our comrades in Delaware who are going to be hosting their first Black Hammer food drive, Black Power. You can also look on the Black Hammer Facebook page, all of our social media. You can see pictures of the comrades cooking, putting the meals together and everything of that nature. It's just a wonderful, great, powerful feeling. And just really salute to those comrades in Delaware. Comrade Nyah is leading the food drive that we're going to be having here in Atlanta, taking place on the 30th.
November 30th.
Tell them about it,
Central
comrade.
Park. We're going to strive to feed as many people as possible.
Yes.
But if you would like to donate to that, you can donate funds to the Black Hammer General Fund, which is BlackHammer.org on Cash App. That's $BlackHammer.org, so you can donate there. If you're in the Atlanta area and you want to help us, hit us up in the comments. You can hit me up. I'm Mark T. Buchanan, and I'll make sure that I get you involved so we can you can help us give out the food. and join Black Hammer.
Yes, Black Power, Black Power. All right, comrades. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be reviewing the last chapters of the book, and that's chapters 31 through 33. So I hope you got your hashtag read that back parts prepared so we can have a very fruitful discussion. Let's go ahead and get it started. Alrighty. So let's see here.
These were some very the chapters following like the trial and everything. It was just the aftermath, and you could tell that there had already been so much damage done by the courts and the government and everything. Cointel Pro had already, and it's just seeing the pieces being picked up.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, we begin with chapter 31, and the chapter is entitled "As It Should Be: Surviving." And this chapter is mainly focused on the second trial that Comrade Huey is going through, you know, after he was charged with, it was an involuntary manslaughter?
Yeah, they found him guilty of voluntary, I think it was voluntary manslaughter of that officer, based on the fact that they felt that Huey wasn't wounded to the point to where he didn't have to shoot the cop.
So, you know, he starts out by telling us, you know, how he has this combination of suspense and deja vu. Like, they don't change any of the witnesses from the first trial. They bring back everybody from the first trial.
Yeah.
And it's just like, damn, you know, like, it's so blatant that they're really just trying to convict Huey P. Newton, and it's done, you know, in the open courts, like,
with these shitty ass witnesses.
And
they're just like, we're still gonna get a conviction.
I believe the only thing that has changed from this point, you had Lowell Jensen, who was the first prosecutor in the trial when it first happened, but now this motherfucker is the district attorney. He has been promoted to the district attorney. So, I mean, like, the whole hostility to Comrade Huey P. Newton is just so open and just so blatant. Like, it's just like, you know, it's just been, you know, let's say, perpetuated by white power, white imperialism, that their courts are absolute. Like, nothing in these courts can be challenged, and, you know, it's just absolute, permanent. Nothing can challenge it. And then you come across, you know, these real life situations, like with not only Comrade Huey P. Newton, Comrade Assata, but, you know, just think of all of the other political prisoners that are in prison right now on trumped up charges. You know, innocent African people, colonized people, just wanted to struggle for a decent way of life.
Yes.
Of life. And I think I was reading somewhere about, you know, like poverty, in that the reality is, in order for there to be a rich people, there has to be poor people. And there can't be one without the other. And, you know, Black Power Comrade Gigi, like when you see this circus of of justice just like play out, it's crazy. So yeah, so again, he's talking about all of the first witnesses that came into, you know, that were in the first trial. They're back again, the same cast, you know, as he says. And he talks about how, you know, we talked about when he was first pulled over, that Comrade Huey was reaching for his law book or whatever, you know, that he always carries on his person. And he was just laying out how that piece of evidence, was so important in the first trial, because the prosecutor's case is built on the fact that Huey got out of the car and he just started shooting all of these pigs. But he only had his law book, and it happened, they had it in evidence for the first case, but now he talks about how in the second case they lost the damn.
Yeah, and then that book had like, I mean, it was soaked in blood and everything. So they lost this, and then they were just so cavalier about it. Just like, yeah, we just got lost. So, you know, it's fine. We can give you a copy of what the law book was, and it wasn't as effective, and they knew that. So.
But they, you know what they did present? They presented a photo.
Yeah.
Of the book that Huey P. Newton was, you know, carrying. So, from there, he talks about how they bring back Del Ross, who was this, you know, this sellout brother, you know, from the first trial, you know, who was basically coerced by, you know, the state in order to produce this false ass testimony.
It's really pathetic.
Yeah. And then up until this point, Huey comments on how they haven't, you know, that he basically appeared out of nowhere. Just out of nowhere. And then, just to show, I mean, just another, you know, indication that all of this shit is just like fake as fuck. Because if you remember in the first trial, they had already discredited Del Ross as a witness. Like, his testimony had already been thrown out. But then you have the state, you know, the police, Lowell, whatever the fuck his name is, DA now, he brings Del Ross back, even understanding, you know, what type of witness, you know, this guy is. And
I mean, it's really sad and pathetic, and I mean, and Huey mentions that when he sees, because the guy, I think Del Ross was so fearful, like he had been threatened and everything, and he was so fearful for having to be back on the stand and basically dehumanized all over again. And he said something along the lines that he didn't even really know what the truth was. I think that, I'm trying to find that quote. But
when he asked, he was like, on page 343, he says, as if this were not enough. Well, before we get to this part, I just wanted to comment on what you were saying just now, Comrade Nyah, where Del Ross even admits that, you know, he's afraid of the judge, he's afraid of the DA.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just so blatant and obvious, like, what the state is trying to do. Like, and we have these conversations about law and what that means, and, you know, how the law doesn't apply to us as African and colonized individuals, and that, in fact, Black Power Comrade Robert, law, at the end of the day, is nothing but the opinion of the ruling class.
Absolutely.
And we see, as this trial plays out, that, you know, the judge, the prosecutor, you know, like all of these lawyers in court are able to maneuver, you know, all of these laws that have been put in place to their advantage. And so, I mean, it's up until the point that they're just basically just throwing shit up against the wall to see what sticks. So, so Ross, you know, admits that he's afraid of the judge, he's afraid of the prosecution team, and all of these things. And like you were saying, Comrade, you know, he asks the question, he says, then looking out into the courtroom, he says, is there anyone here who believes in the truth? Would you raise your hand? This was such a bizarre development that the entire courtroom sat stunned. No one moved or spoke except the district attorney, who raised his hand and said, Mr. Ross, I believe in the truth. The judge leaned over and told White to put his hand down. Then Del Ross continued, because I don't know what the truth is myself. And we understand, you know, like, I feel sorry for Del Ross too. Even understanding, you know, that this brother, you know, his actions has, you know, put Huey P. Newton in this predicament. But we also understand that, you know, that Del Ross wasn't born inherently wanting to sell out his people.
No.
That he didn't have some type of personal gripe with Huey P. Newton to go and make up this false story and things of that nature. And I want to say that in the beginning, Del Ross may have been doing this for some type of benefit, that he may have been paid by the state, by these police officers to make up this fabricated testimony and things of that nature. But as Huey lays it out this second time, we understand that Ross has probably been threatened. More than likely, he has been beaten. His family has been harassed, and just all of these different factors. But I mean, that just speaks to, the fact that the state will do anything. And when we say the state, that's the judicial system, the police, the school system, like all of these institutions that make up the superstructure for white power, they will do all of these things to just squash any type of resistance from the people.
Right. It was something else you had said that I wanted to comment on, but it's, I know what it was. They have unlimited resources to do that. They have access, if it's something that they need, if they need money, if they need witnesses, that's how these people just come out of nowhere, because they have the unlimited resources to make witnesses appear or plant evidence on somebody when they're trying to get somebody convicted. Just like you were saying a little bit ago, the political prisoners, there are political prisoners that are still rotting away in prison to this day from those times. So the state, there's nothing I would put past the state when it comes to throwing our people away into a system that continues to make the state what it is.
All right. I just lastly want to read, how Comrade Huey is able to sum up, who Ross is as an individual and how he even comes to be in this predicament. He says, with that, Ross's effectiveness as a witness was demolished. I was sorry to see him so dehumanized, for he seemed to me living proof of what American society can do to oppressed and poor people. A despicable abuse of power a despicable abuse of power had intimidated a weak man, a man who had little to lose, but was so terrified to let go of that. The whole pattern of his life had taught him to fear and defer to those who control a society's institutions. At last, faced with a crucial test that resembled all the earlier small, humiliating choices in his life, he had no resources to help him resist. He gave in again, and his defeat ended in misery and shame. And so many people that we know, so many regular, everyday black and colonized people that we know we are all, faced in the same situation. That's why you have to be tied to organization. Absolutely. Because when you are, coerced, are harassed by the state, by these agents, these police officers, all of these different institutions, you have organization to fall back on, to even give you that semblance of courage to say, no, motherfucker, I'm not selling out my people. I'm not selling out, I'm not selling out the interests of our liberation or anything else of that nature. Right. And when you have that, when you have organization, there is absolutely nothing that you cannot do. There is nothing that you cannot do. But unfortunately, Ross didn't have, access to that.
No.
So yeah.
And then of course that other witness, Henry Greer, the one that was supposed to be at the scene, and the bus driver. Same thing we're seeing with that. No sense of dignity, in the sense that no, I'm not going to sell out this person that, one, I know I didn't see do anything, and then two, that I even know what's going on with us as a people, and I don't feel a need to resist that same system that wants me to, sell out that person. It is sad. It is like, and there's so many Del Rosses and Henry Greers out there. So many. And and also they disproved Greer as well too, because Huey, talks about how, through all of the testimonies, his lawyer, Charles, what's his last name? Charles Gary, had taken into account that for each officer,
that testified in the trial in the first time, none of them commented on seeing a bus at the scene. Now remember that Henry was introduced to this case because he was the bus driver and he saw the whole altercation take place from his bus. But Charles, just again documented that in all of the testimonies that were documented, none of the officers said that they saw a bus at the scene. So what they did for this trial, they went and got the superintendent of the bus company or whatever you want to call it. And he said that Henry Greer was nowhere even near the scene when this happened. But then you got all of this shit that's just coming out, just coming out, disproving everything that the prosecution team has built up against Huey. But the trial still goes on. They still make the trial go on.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
I'm actually surprised that the bus company, that they didn't pay them off as a company to say, hey, we just need you to say that you had him go out this way. Because for them to have that case pending, like standing on that, those witnesses, I just feel like, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, them being able to discredit the bus driver and things of that nature, that was basically the last leg that the prosecution team could stand on. So, their case just basically fell apart. And then we hear on December 15th, 1970, I'm sorry, not 1970, but December 15th, Lowell Jensen, the DA, has no other choice but then to ask that the trial be dismissed. And then you have the dismissal is granted, but then, Comrade Huey just, comments on how the legal assaults, that, were spent through this time, all of the money that the party raised for his legal defense, like all of these resources that were exhausted because of this vile-ass process. You can't even call it a process. It was an attack. It was an attack carried out by the state.
Yeah.
There's no other place, there's no other way that you could try to paint it. And, just like from reading about this trial, I just have the same feelings about when we read about Comrade Asada and the bullshit that they put her through. Like all of this made up shit that they.
It was just a real reflection of what you're dealing with and why a system like this, you really should not put any type of integrity into it, because they're not using integrity to deal with you or your people and all the resources that the community. There was no government grants given to raise money for the trials and things that Huey had to undergo, or Comrade Asada had to undergo. This is what the community raised. The community came together to put this together, to get Huey out, to resist, and they would have done it again if they at any given chance. There's countless political prisoners now that the same process, they went through the exact same process.
Black Power. All right. So, Comrade, do you have a hashtag? Read that back for chapter 30.
I think I had actually looked back where Huey had stood up when we realized that Dale was just terrified out of his mind. And then, he basically gets the courts riled up. What did I say? I think I had highlighted on page 342. He said, turning to the angry crowd, I urge them to be calm, and if they touch me, you know what to do. And I said, but be disciplined now. Yeah. That was dope to me. That was my read that back.
Black Power. Well, my read that back part was, for Comrade Huey, in his summation of, who Del Ross was as an individual. And, just how, so many of us, without organization, are left open to
Right.
these, to these types of manipulations and, things of that nature. So, if comrades here in the comments, if you have a hashtag read that back for chapter 31, please make sure you put that there. Other than that, we're going to go ahead and move on to chapter 32, which is entitled China. And I want to read this quote that Comrade Huey has here, at the beginning, which is from Chairman Mao in his Little Red Book. And it says, "The people who have triumphed in their own revolution should help those still struggling for liberation. This is our internationalist duty." Black Power. Black Power, Comrade Cameron, it's okay. Black Power Chikonde, what's going on, Comrade? So in chapter 32, Comrade Huey, speaks about his visit to China. And, up until this point, China, has been such a great example of, what we understand that the revolution that happened in China, wasn't absolute, and I mean that's evident by what we see, happening there now.
Yeah.
But at this point in the 1960s, up into the 70s and things of that nature, there had never really been no concrete, example. Well, other than what we were able to see what happened in Vietnam, but I believe all of that stuff was happening like in the crux of the same time. But, Comrade Huey in this chapter just speaks about, his experience of visiting China and, just the freedom that he felt, in this time when he took this visit to China. And first, one of the first things that he comments on is the police behavior within China. And, just this stark difference that he sees, from being here in the States versus going over, to take this visit in China. And he says, "For instance, the behavior of the police in China was a revelation to me. They are there to protect and help the people, not to oppress them. Their courtesy was genuine. No division or suspicion exists between them and the citizens. This impressed me so much that when I returned to the United States and was met by the goddamn tactical squad, like, what? The tactical squad, that is, that is a squadron that you would see, deployed in war somewhere, some type of shit like that. But you need a whole tactical squad, for this, this brother, who was doing nothing but, fighting for the liberation of his people."
I mean,
and he says that he's met and was met by the tactical squad at the San Francisco airport. They had been called out because nearly 1,000 people came to the airport to welcome us back. It was brought home to me all over again that the police in our country are occupying repressive force. I pointed this out to a customs officer in San Francisco, a black man who was armed, explained to him that I felt intimidated seeing all those guns around. I had just left a country, I told him, where the army and the police are not in opposition to the police, but are their servants. That's the, that...
And that's, public service. That's the name that they give pigs in the U.S. And we know that that's not the case. And reading this part where Huey actually goes to a different country, a socialist country, where the police really are the servants of the people, it's almost unheard of. It's almost unheard of because we as black people and colonized people, when have we ever felt like we could actually call a pig and actually get help? Like, what goes through your mind when you think, what if I'm ever in a dire situation where I need help? Who the fuck would you call? Would you call a pig? Or, but in China, it was just like him outlining this difference was just so, like, surreal. Like,
and then, white power has done such a great job of being able to manipulate the mind of the masses.
Yes.
And, you know, when you see a police officer, what white imperialism has been able to do is distance the history of the police officer from the original police officer, which was the slave catcher, the slave patrol. Exactly. These individuals that were hired by the slave master to go out and return Africans who had escaped from slavery. And you have to understand that in that period in time, African people were property. We were owned. Yes. We were property.
No rights.
So when you understand that the police, the pigs, how they stand now are an apparatus of the state. And the state is what is put between us as colonized and oppressed people versus white imperialism, white power. So when you understand that relationship, there's no way that the police can operate within our community other than to serve the interests of the white ruling class. That is to protect their institutions that they may have in our, in our communities, or even just to be this intimidating presence so that we won't rise up and resist the oppression that is forced upon us the other day. I was just sitting here with a brother, a teacher, a school teacher, who was pulled over, right? Listen to this shit, Nyah. He was pulled over, had his license, registration, and everything. But at this point in time, he's pulled over. He's just leaving his school. And the thing about it is he lives across the street from where his school is, literally up the street. Wow. Where his school is. So he's pulled over by the pigs. They ask him for his wallet. Now, mind you, again, he's right out front of his school, and his students are outside of watching this whole thing take place. So he's in the car. The pigs come up to him. At first, it's a white pig. It's a white woman pig, y'all. And this is an African man. So, of course, you know this bitch calls for backup.
Of course she does.
So the backup gets there. Before oh shit. This shit is crazy. Okay, so listen. Okay. Before she calls backup, right? He informs her, the teacher, the brother informs her that he has his wallet, but it's in the back seat of his car in his laptop bag. So the only reason why he's even having to explain this shit to him in the first place, because he knows a possibility that this white pig bitch will shoot the fuck out of him and he can die in front of his students. So he tells this pig that. So this is when she goes and she calls for backup. So it's another white nationalist, white ass pig who comes to the scene, and the brother explains the same thing. Do you know that they pulled him out of his car and placed him in handcuffs, put him in the back seat of the patrol car while they went and they got his wallet from out of the back seat?
Disgusting.
And I told that brother, I said, what they were doing, it don't matter. Let me tell you something. You can be a lawyer, you can be a state official, anything that you want to be, but it does not matter at all. It does not matter at all, not 1 ounce. And I told him that these pigs did that to you, my brother, because your students were standing there, they were watching this shit, and these pigs wanted them to know, I don't give a fuck if you grow up to be a teacher. I don't give a fuck what you grow up to be, period. We still can humiliate you like this. We still can take your human dignity away. And that is the relationship that we have to the pigs. Yes. No other way. It's no other. They're not here to protect us. And how could they be here to protect us when 10 times out of 9 the pigs that you see operating in your community don't even live in your community? They drive 1 to 2 hours away to come and patrol in your community. So how can they know that sister so-and-so has a son who may have autism and he has to be cared for in this certain type of way? Or how are they supposed to know auntie so-and-so, she just likes to walk the street late at night because that's what she just likes to do? And then you have these pigs who don't live in our community, and they come and attack our people they just live in. They're just living.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even black pigs.
Black pigs.
They
Black
don't
pigs.
Live there. They don't live there. They don't know anything about the people that live in that community, and it's just. For us to see that happening time and time again. There was a doctor, a black woman doctor, that was going to live in her gated community, got home, or got to the gate. Somebody called the police on her, and she was just appalled that it was happening. Like, for her to be surprised was like, well, that's how disconnected you are from the community. But for you to be there and then this be happening to you and you to be surprised and appalled, why are you?
We gotta remember.
How are you surprised?
That's what we gotta do. We gotta remember. We have to remember. Black people in the United States, how can you transition from being a commodity that was sold, traded, to being some type of upstanding civilian, so-called civilian in this system? How can that? There's no way that you can absolutely change that relationship without destroying the whole relationship in the first place of how the whole relationship came into being. Right. If the slave catcher went from securing us human beings as a commodity, now the only thing that they're securing now is the property of the white ruling class, and we're items, not even necessarily items, but we're the aftermath of that relationship, and the relationship is still intact. It's still intact. The only thing is they're not securing us. They're securing the resources of the ruling class. They're securing the resources of their boss.
And their amendments even tell you that the chattel slavery as we once knew it is still very much something that they can enforce if you're determined to be a criminal. Prison,
jail. That's the new plantation. That's the new plantation. So,
and we're filling them up with it. I mean,
they're filling yes. the prisons up with us and colonized people. So further on in the chapter, Comrade Huey, just speaks about how he was able to, visit all of these different embassies that they had in China. How he was able to speak with Comrade Chiang Cheng, who was the wife of Chairman Mao. He wasn't able to meet with Chairman Mao, during this trip, and he just speaks about his disappointment of not being able to, just spend the time there that he wanted to. I believe they said that they spent, like 10 days there. 10
days there for such a short time.
And they had even offered him political asylum.
Yes.
In China. And what's so commendable about Comrade Huey's stance is that he told them, no, my struggle is in the United States. And that's just so deep and profound. So let's read some of these comments here that we got real quick. You can read it from your phone.
I got, Gigi has her hashtag read that back up. And she says, what we got here? My read that back for chapter 32. I thought I had left that routine behind in the California penal colony, but I know that the penitentiary is the only one. Is only one kind of captivity within the larger prison of a racist society. When we arrived at the free territory where security is supposed to be so tight and everyone suspects, the comrades with the red stars on their hats asked us for our passports. Seeing they were in order, they simply bowed and asked us if the luggage was ours. And when we said yes, they replied, "You have passed customs." And they did not open our bags when we arrived or when we left. Finally, being treated as a decent human being, and just beautifully to see on so much solidarity from the Chinese. That's a great one, Comrade Gigi. And then Rai, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Ho, intimidation is the name of the game. Yes, absolutely. And then Gigi says, back Black and colonized pigs are completely brainwashed by the system. They can't help our communities from the inside when their job is literally made to terrorize us and put us in captivity. As an individual, they can't change shit. Absolutely not.
And then that's the thing, because when you're confronted with these colonized, this is the last thing I'm gonna say, then we can move on. Because when you get white power's excuse as well, but you got black pigs, you got Mexican pigs, you got Chinese pigs, you got all of these colonized pigs. And then when you question these brothers and sisters about why they have chosen to, unite with this force, the thing is, the most popular response is, oh, well, I just want to change it from the inside. How are you going to change 600 plus years of history? How are you going to be able to change something that has been put... God damn it, how are you going to be able to change something that was used once in a period of time to secure your black ass back on the plantation? How can you change that? How can you change that relationship as an individual?
It makes me think of that one cop in LA. You remember that guy's name? He ended up, he's dead now. What was his name? Christopher Dorman, I think. That's what I think about when I think of somebody who actually is trying to, and I gotta remember the story, but y'all know who I'm talking about. It's a cop who actually was trying to expose the corruption in the LAPD. And corruption means something went bad. We know it started out bad, so sorry about that. But this particular cop was trying to expose what was happening, and he ended up dying, and I think he shot or killed some people on his own that's how bad he was trying to expose it. And that would be like my only exception for somebody who was actually trying to do something right in the interest of justice and the people from that system. But he ended up being basically a martyr.
Yeah.
So.
Black Power Mutava.
Black Power Mutava.
Christopher Dorner.
That's it. That's him.
Okay.
That's him.
Black Power. So throughout the rest of this chapter, that's Comrade Huey just talks about his experience there. And I want to say, for me, my hashtag read that back part comes at the end of the chapter on page 353. And it says, my experiences in China reinforced my understanding of the revolutionary process and my belief in the necessity of making a concrete analysis of concrete conditions. The Chinese speak with great pride about their history and their revolution and mention often the invisible thoughts of Chairman Mao Zedong. But they also tell you, this was our revolution based upon a concrete analysis of concrete conditions, and we cannot direct you, only give you the principles. It is up to you to make the correct creative application. Black Power.
Black Power.
And what's so beautiful about Black Hammer is that we're a new revolutionary grassroots organization. And I believe that we're in that process of figuring out how to apply, these principles and make our own correct creative application. And you see that in what we're carrying out right now, the book club to offer political education. You see that in propaganda. You see that in the food drives that we're hosting. You see that, in the actions. You see that in the hashtag Protect Our Girls campaign led by Chief Muhammadu. It's just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this chapter and him kind of just even it just makes me kind of think of even when Malcolm X went to Mecca and just kind of he saw how things were done there. He wanted to bring the way that things were actually carried out there back to here to lead by an example. But my hashtag read that back was at the bottom of page 352. He says, but I did not go to China just to admire. I went to learn and also to criticize. Since no society is perfect, there was little, however, to find fault with. The Chinese insist that you find something to criticize. They believe strongly in the most searching self-examination and criticism of others, and in turn of self. As they say, without criticism, the hinges of the door begin to squeak. It's very difficult to pay them compliments. Criticize us, they would say, because we are a backward country. And I always replied, no, you are an underdeveloped country. he said, I did have one criticism to make during the visit to a steel factory, and then he goes into like the pollution. But the reason why I chose that as my read that back was because even in the best of societies and civilizations and things of that sort, criticism is necessary. And it makes a lot of us uncomfortable, including myself and everything. But when we focus on the things that are, you can focus on the things that are going really well, and then you can focus on the things that are not working so well or things that are wrong just to make it better, because you really want to create a society that really works for everyone. When for so long, colonizing African people have been commodities and are still commodities in a lot of ways. So I appreciated him focusing on, him, realizing that this society was a great one, and that the police were actually service to the people. But then he also needed to find things that, okay, well, what can we do better? And that plant that was putting out a lot of pollution that could actually be detrimental to the people that live there was something good to focus on.
Black power. So, moving on to our last chapter, do you want to see if you have any comments?
Yeah, and then Gigi said that was her second read that back, so I appreciate that. Yeah. It says, Arise says, when someone tries to change something from the inside, they cut themselves off from community, which is the only way to make real and lasting change. Black Power, Rye. And thank you, DP, for reminding us of the name of that cop we were talking about earlier. But that's it.
That is so entirely true, and I think that in this last chapter, Comrade Huey talks about, how an individual can separate themselves from the community, and this individual he's speaking about in this chapter is Eldridge Cleaver, and I want to read this quote that he has at the beginning of this chapter as well too by Chairman Mao, and it says, "We must undoubtedly criticize wrong ideas of every description. And it certainly would not be right to refrain from criticism, look on while wrong ideas spread unchecked and allow them to monopolize the field. Mistakes must be criticized and poisonous weeds fought wherever they crop up." Black power.
Yes.
Black power. So yes, in this chapter, Comrade Huey, speaks about Eldridge Cleaver, and he talks about how, when he got out of prison in August 1970, that the party was, pretty much in shambles.
Right.
And, the only thing, he says that it's understandable for a number of reasons, with him and Bobby being off of the streets. But, I want to raise a criticism of that because, we understand that even in the absence of our leaders, we have to have systems in place that if something is to happen, that the party, the organization must be able to, it has to be able to continue to function. Absolutely. And I feel like, this contradiction plays a lot into why, the party was so able to be defeated in such a way because, there wasn't some type of, like backup plan or something of that nature. And Comrade, I don't want to, speak and not say that there may have possibly been one, but historical evidence says that there wasn't. And, we, again, just with the understanding that, the state will do anything to, quell, to squash our resistance, we have to have these types of things, these types of, backup plans, to make sure that the revolution can still carry on. So, he speaks about that, and then he talks about the party being born and how, that mainly how we were introduced to the Black Panther Party was through their their militarization of how they were out policing the cops with, their guns, and how it was basically born out of self-defense because we were tired of being brutalized by the pigs. And, what Comrade Huey highlights is the fact that Eldridge Cleaver was not able to move from beyond that point.
Yes.
That he felt like us picking up the gun, shoot 'em up, bang bang. That's what revolution was. But like Comrade Rye just said in the comments, Eldridge Cleaver alienated himself from the community because we understand that we want the community to participate in revolution, but we have to do it in such a way that we don't pretty much scare them away from wanting to come into our ranks. And, you know, that's what Comrade Huey says, is that you have to be able to not only move along with the times, because what may have worked in the 1960s when when the Black Panther Party was prevalent then may not work for Black Hammer now.
Right.
And, you know, it's you would have to be able to adjust to the times to speak to the present issues at that time, because in the present, because depending, no matter what that issue may be, that may be the catalyst to really start off the organization that we begin to see. So if you're not able to, you know, change strategies to strange tactics in order to make your organization attractive enough for people to want to be a part of it, then what is really the point of your work?
Absolutely. I appreciate it so much about this chapter based on what you were just saying, and then just the fact that he emphasized the fact that we do have to relate to the community. You have to start where the community is. And there's so many different ways that you can reflect. I was reading something on this other book where this comrade said that she didn't even actually align with the line of what the Black Panther Party was saying, but the reason why she got involved was because she knew that her people needed to be fed. So when they were doing the free breakfast program, she would go out and she would participate in that. Then when she had her first experience or her first run-in with the pigs, is what changed her. Is basically that's how she got involved and said, I'm full throttle into this. So I really appreciated that. I did want to raise something that I kind of had a criticism with, something that Huey said on page 356, and maybe I just need to reread it again to make sure I fully understand. But he says at the top of the first paragraph, it says, most important, it has raised the consciousness of Black and white citizens about the relationship between the police and minorities in the country. It is difficult to realize now how much the police relations in the Black community have changed in 6 short years. Our communities are still not free from brutal incidents and corruption, but it is nonetheless true that police departments have become more sensitive to the problems of urban minorities. And I don't know that I necessarily... I don't unite with that, because even if there's maybe in that 6 years after that incident happened with Huey, maybe they changed their response because of the type of attention it was getting from the people and the masses,
and it couldn't be so open and blatant.
Yeah. But I don't think based on what we're seeing in 2019, I have to starkly disagree with that.
Because Mike Brown was a part of an urban community. Trayvon Martin was a part of an urban community. Sandra Bland, so many Black people and colonized people, we are the urban community. So I mean, like, up there, I
disagree with that. And then just the fact that you still have these coalitions and these initiatives to bridge the relationship between the police departments and the colonized communities and the Black communities, and that shit's a farce. They've told you over and over before. They'll circulate all these viral videos of sweet cops giving out ice cream and playing with our kids. I don't want them pigs near my kids. Right. I don't want them pigs near my kids, and I don't want my child to see a cop and think that is a friend. It's not. That is a sham. That is a farce. That is a lie. And I would be doing more damage, I feel, as a parent, to lead him to believe such a lie when we see these things happening to those comrades and countless others that we don't even know because they didn't reach a certain level of public exposure, that this has happened time and time again to people. It will continue to happen. And so I don't want to farce any type of relationship with law enforcement because of what they represent, and B, just the fact that you insult me to believe that I should trust you as a cop when you are constantly killing my people.
Exactly. All cops are bad. Please. So Comrade Huey goes, to deepen his analysis of of Eldridge Cleaver. And he makes this point where he says, Eldridge Cleaver identified with other negative aspects of the party. It is not coincidence that he joined the party only after the Ramparts confrontation. What appealed to him were forced firepower in the intense moment when combatants stood at the brink of death. For him, this was revolution. Eldridge's ideology was based on the rhetoric of violence. His speeches abounded in either-or absolutes like either pick up the gun or remain a sniveling coward. He would not support the survival programs, refusing to see that they were a necessary part of the revolutionary process, a means of bringing the people closer to the transformation of society. He believed this transformation could take place only through violence by picking up the gun and storming the barricades, and in his obsessive belief annihilated him more and more from the community. By refusing to abandon the position of destruction and despair, he underestimated the enemy and took on the role of reactionary suicide. And that's so deep. And the only other comment that I want to make about that is that, when we see, like, for example, when Comrade Mike Brown was murdered in Ferguson, in the aftermath of that, we saw, the riots, the transformative riots, the righteous riots that took place. Right. But after those riots were defeated, because they were, we understood that, we saw all of these white liberal organizations and, the black left come in and, bring all of these different community programs and all of these different things like that to basically pacify, the people, to say, hey, Mike Brown died, well, at least you got a new library, or at least you got a new sports program for the children and things of that nature. We understand that to be pacification. When you look at a revolutionary organization that is putting on food drives for the community, that is putting on free breakfast programs for the community, the difference between what the state is doing and what a revolutionary organization is doing, we put on these things, we do these initiatives not only to speak to, the contradiction right then and there, but it's a show to our people that if we organize, if we can come together as a people and organize something, such as a homeless food drive, imagine what we can do in organizing the fight for liberation. Where that's not a tool of pacification. That's a tool to let your black ass know that we are more than capable of leading this fight, that we are more than capable of having a revolution and freeing our people of white imperialism. That's why we put on food drives. That's why we do these campaigns, #protect our girls, and things of that nature, because that is the example.
Yes.
That's the entryway. That is the entryway for us to bring our people into this revolutionary process.
I want to point out something that Comrade Max said. He said, I often wonder if Eldridge Cleaver was working with the government from the beginning. He became a conservative Republican when he came from Africa and got no jail time, for any of those charges. And Mac, I think that's a interesting point to make. I know that Eldridge did do some time in prison, and he found his way to the party, or the party found its way to him, like shortly after his release from prison. And I'm wondering, like, even if maybe he wasn't intertwined with it in the beginning, if somehow he got intertwined with it later. There's a lot of things about Eldridge Cleaver that I question as to his real motives of it. But that is something, I just felt like there was a sense of sabotage. And even way back in the book when Huey was imprisoned at first, and even like when they were putting out certain propaganda about, it was something, I forgot what they said, but they were it was more like they were encouraging to go out and kill the cops or something like that. And I was like, while I don't have any problems with a pig dying, I was questioning the responsibility of that being disseminated in the community, and what would be the actual result of that, because it would be things that we would do, like we wouldn't do in a certain way, that we wouldn't move, in that we were like, we need to be responsible with what we're putting out there. And I just felt like Eldridge's perception wasn't the good of the people. It was like more like a reactionary
it
type.
most definitely was a reactionary position.
Yeah.
So my hashtag read that back part of chapter 33, the last chapter, y'all, comes on page 357, where Comrade Huey says, from a dialectical point of view, something positive has arisen out of Eldridge's defection. While he and his followers still identify with aspects of the party that once alienated us from the community, the party has moved in a different direction. He has taken the media's image squarely upon his own shoulders. We are glad to be free of the burden. What little we lost in credibility, we have gained in a wider acceptance of the party by the community. We have reached a more advanced state. There has been a qualitative leap forward, a growth in consciousness. Black power. And, I felt like that was powerful, because, that is basically, what we as an organization, as Black Hammer, has to do. Of course, we understand that, times have changed from, the time of the Black Party. And, times are changing now. And, we as a revolutionary organization, if we say we are about what we say we are about, then we as an organization must continuously raise the consciousness of our community of, African and colonized people. Black power.
Black power. There's a lot of little tidbits in here, but I liked the way that it ended. The chapter ended. He said the Black Panther Party expresses this principle, and the principle he's talking about is a real generosity towards the future lies in giving all to the present. And says, by giving all to the present, we reject fear, despair, and defeat. We work to repair the breaches of the past. We strive to carry out the revolutionary principle of transformation, and through long struggle, in Camus' words, to remake the soul of our time. And I actually was driving the other day, and I was sitting and I was talking about thinking out loud, and what my idea of a revolutionized society would look like, and what it would feel like to live in that. And it was almost like I still couldn't picture it all, because it was just a lot that would have to change. And even me as a human being, I'm trying to reprogram myself to think a totally different way. And it was almost like, what does it say? It was almost like it was difficult. Sometimes you really do have to kind of soak yourself into the present, and you can't get too caught up in all the details of what that society would look like. You just work toward giving towards everything to create that. Because the reality is that we likely won't live to see that society carried out and fulfilled. Hopefully our children will, or at least our grandchildren will. But for us to do nothing and say, well, things are just the way that they are, and we just leave things and we just do the best we can, then our children and our grandchildren and our fathers and sisters and brothers we will continuously be robbed of their presence, based on the fact that they were born into a colonized society, were treated as a colonized individual by a ruling class. And so I just thought about it the other day. It was just like, it was difficult for me to kind of really picture that, and what that would look like. But I was just like, but all I know is that now I'm working to bring that reality into an existence.
Black power.
So.
Oh, so that concludes Revolutionary Suicide by Comrade Huey P. Newton. How do you feel about the book, Comrade?
I love the book, and when you guys get a chance, read the epilogue too, because it's really powerful. But the book, I loved hearing Huey's account for the Black Panther Party. I think this was the source that we needed to hear it from. Him and Bobby Seale, like with them being the co-founders of the organization, and then of course, you know, there's all these accounts of what the Black Panther Party was, that, you know, the PBS special that of course was going to have their own spin on it and everything. They made, I mean, I remember watching that documentary, and it made it seem like Huey had problems or something, and it was just some things that I was kind of wondering, like the what was behind that. But this book, I think Huey was a genius, and I, you know, his ability to write, his ability, you know, remember this comrade came out of high school basically illiterate, and the fact that he was able to conceptualize
an entire revolutionary organization.
Yes, and just the foundation that he and Bobby Seale put together as the blueprint for freedom, and how the state attacked him for his persistence in making, I mean, even when he was just like, we're just gonna, I'm playing by your rules. Anytime I got stopped, I'm gonna play by your rules, and this is why you stopped me, and this is, you can't stop me for this and everything. That they saw as a threat. So in him to paint that for the masses of people to understand, this is why we need to come into revolutionary life, because no matter what we do, no matter how we play by their rules, we won't be free in this system until we fight back. The fact that we, you know, telling people that you have a right to defend yourselves and your families and your communities, and these programs that we enact, that they enacted with, you know, feeding the community and things of that sort. Then when we learned that the police were telling the people that the food was poisoned, and I'm not even sure if he did talk about that in here. You know, just the fact that, you know, why would you stop? If this is the organization that's about feeding the people, and you saying get off of welfare, so to speak, and feed yourselves, then we do that.
White people make up the majority of people who are recipients of welfare.
That's fact number one. Then, you know, you tell people to stop going to this free program that's feeding children, Black poor children, and you tell these people, the families, well, they're poisoning the food, so stop taking your kids there. You know, I mean, I just, there's so many things from this. I'm definitely going to be reading this book again, but it was just an amazing, just reliving of what the Black Panther Party was, and the concept of revolutionary suicide, and how that was framed.
That, I mean, yeah, I unite with everything that you laid out, comrade. But for me, the Revolutionary Suicide Manifesto was the most impressionable thing about reading this book. And I say that because, you know, even though, you know, internalizing what it means to be a revolutionary, being able to read that, you know, just really put into context, like, what being a revolutionary is. And I think, you know, as revolutionaries, for Comrade Huey to take his own personal, you know, experience, and then to be able to theorize it in such a way has just been so beneficial for all of us. And just being, you know, this real, just concrete realization of what it is to unite with being a revolutionary, and uniting to, you know, dedicate your life to the struggle for freedom. And it's that was extremely transformative for me, and I really appreciate Comrade Huey for that.
Yes.
Black Power.
This was a good book.
Yes.
If you guys have any thoughts about it, let us know. And Rye says this was an awesome read. Ron says thank you for critiquing Stanley Nelson's film and that PBS film. Yeah, there was some issues I really had with that recollection of the Black Panther Party. There was I need to go back and watch it again just so I can pull out more, but there were several that I had.
Or we can even send it over to Comrade Robert. He can analyze it on
Propaganda. Yes.
All right, y'all. So before we go, you know, whenever we finish a book, I mean, we got another one coming up for y'all, and I am extremely excited. So y'all ready to know what book we're reading next? If you ready to know, let me see some hearts on there. Let me see some hearts. Let me see some hearts. And we need lots of hearts. Thank you, Gigi. Thank you for your hearts. Come on, y'all. What a heart at? Y'all don't want to know what we're reading next. Y'all don't want to know what we're reading next. Dang, nah, they don't want to know. Let's go ahead and end it. All right, we can see y'all. Bye, y'all. Bye. All right, y'all know we ain't gonna do that. We're gonna let y'all know. Okay, we see the hearts. All right,
there they go.
So drum roll, please. The next book we're going to be reading is How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. Yes, comrades, we are going to be, the next book for the Revolutionary Book Trap is going to be How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And I mean, this is a great book. Can you really imagine that this book is only 6 chapters? This book is only 6 chapters. So we're going to be doing some very extensive Black File Comrade, you said she got her book yesterday. We're going to be doing some very extensive analysis into this book because, I mean, basically, we're starting at the beginning. Like, how did Africa come to be in this position now? How we came to be in this position now? And I feel like, if you want to turn anybody on to the Revolutionary Book Trap, you should really get them to tune in, for our review of this book. And I mean, it's going to offer so much insight about, as the title says, as it plainly says, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. And you don't want to miss it.
I can't wait. I really am excited. I have a different version of the book, but we want to give you guys a chance to get the book, get your hands on the book. But we also have the PDF, so you guys can follow along. But I'm really excited because, just like you said, reading about how Europe, brought their disease-infested.
Gigi said she a thick book. Okay.
So I'm just really excited to get into this and to analyze this with you, comrade.
Yes.
I'm really excited.
Yes.
I really am.
So y'all listen, if you want the PDF, hit us up. Black Hammer Facebook page, Black Hammer, Instagram, Twitter, blackhammer.org. Hit us up in the inbox. We can get you the PDF. Where, of course, we started with chapter 1. But first, we're going to really have to break these chapters down because they're long. And so we're going to space them out. But for our first session, we're going to read, of course, we're going to start at chapter 1. But what we have to do is we're going to start at chapter 1. But we're going to stop reading at, you know what, comrade? I think we should stop reading at what is underdevelopment.
That subtitle?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I only say that because Nyah has a different version than me. And I believe this is the original copy, but they have out so many different versions. So we're going to start at chapter 1. So even if you have the PDF, make sure that you we're going to stop reading at the subtitle where it says, hold on, let me find it just a second, where it says, what is underdevelopment? Yeah. So we're going to read all the way up from there up until that point. So y'all make sure y'all come next Sunday, 11 Eastern Standard Time, right here on the Black Hammer Facebook page. Make sure you got your hashtag read that back prepared, all of that good stuff. Also, again, just really want to send a Black Power salute to our comrades in Delaware who are doing their food drive today. And also want to salute Comrade Chief Nyah, who's putting on the food drive here here in Atlanta. And that's page 14, Comrade Gigi. And tell them how they can donate for that food drive, comrade.
Yeah, to donate to the food drive that we're doing in Atlanta, please send your donations to Cash App $BlackHammer.org. We will get we'll be able to utilize that to go towards the food costs and the other things that we'll need in order to feed the homeless here in Atlanta. So $BlackHammer.org to donate to that. And yeah, if you're in the area, again, please hit us up so you can come out and help us to get to know us, and then to feed the people, to get with the community, to know the community, and then get to know us so that we can pull your ass into the revolution.
Right, exactly.
That's really what it is.
Tell them what we cooking. Tell them what we making.
We're going to make some curry chicken. We're going to have some rice, some sweet potato casserole sort of stuff, and then some cornbread.
Hey, it's lit.
Not the
lit.
sweet one either. We're going to have the buttermilk cornbread.
Oh.
Because I just have the strong opinion that cornbread is not cornbread if it's sweet. It must have that.
I don't know about that, Conrad.
I know that's the debate.
Cause see, I use when I make dressing like stuffing, I use buttermilk cornbread.
Yes.
But if I'm just eating like regular cornbread, Jiffy Mix, I don't put too much sugar. I just like it to have a slight sweetness, not too overbearing sweetness. Because I feel like cornbread is kind of like a savory type, sweet type dish or whatever. But I'm down with it. So.
Yeah.
All right, comrades, make sure you catch us back here, Revolutionary Book Trap, every Sunday morning, 11 Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you support the Revolutionary Book Trap by donating, and you can go through Cash App, BH Book Club. You can also donate through GoFundMe.com/BlackHammerOrg, or you can just go to BlackHammerOrg.org and donate through there, okay? All right, y'all, we got our new book, How Europe Developed Africa by Walter Rodney. Too excited to speak, y'all. All right, thank you, Conrad, Gigi. Black Power until next time.
And become a member.
Yes. Black Power.